Wow. Hi, Ruth. Hey, Kat. Wow. The gang's all here. It's like our normal Tuesday and Thursday gang. And I'm here too. So let's see. We got like 11 people on Instagram, and we have like 3 people already on Facebook. So we're gonna wait a couple minutes like we always do to kind of like hop on our project for the day. In my ear, as always, is my friend Mike, who's gonna help me with questions, because when I step away from the iPad, my eyes know so good to see the questions as they scroll along the bottom of the screen. Hey, speaking of that, because Kyle's watching too, I neglected to print that email you sent me this morning with some questions that people already have. And hey, Marlene, thank you. Thanks for spending part of your day with us. We appreciate it. In fact, everybody, thanks for spending some time with us. You know, this started out, we had a meeting a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about how we can connect with our customers and with some of you, and we kind of hoped that we would get like 5 or 10 people, and you know, we're already at like 40 today, so we'll see how that goes. And I know that one of our videos a couple weeks ago has been watched something like 500 times on Facebook since we videoed it a couple weeks back. So today we're going to talk about colored cocoa butter, and I'm going to be completely full disclosure. There are some people in this industry that are way better with colored cocoa butter than I am, and do some really unbelievable things. In fact, the last couple Fridays we've chatted with some of those people that include, you know, Chris Harvey. We chatted with, you know, Chris Elbow. Both of those guys use colored cocoa butter and are true artists with that. And I don't want to step on their toes, because I'm nowhere near their caliber with using colored cocoa butter. But you know, we at Tomric get a lot of questions about, you know, equipment that we use and some basics on how to do it. And so we decided that we would do a cocoa butter 101 today. And that's really what we're going to do. So we're going to start. I'm going to walk you through some of the equipment and some of the tools I use. And then I'll show you a couple little techniques that we use around here. I had a moment that I was fearful that I neglected to put my gloves underneath the counter, that I did not set my mise en place all the way up. So fortunately, they were there, not because I remember to put them there, but because somebody else probably remembered to put them there. So anyway, so we're going to do that, and then we'll do a little bit of coloring today, and we'll take a look at some. We won't be able to take a look at some finished goods, but we'll talk a little bit about temperatures and equipment and things. So for me, in the must-have category, I have a compressor. So let's talk about that too. So this is a compressor. This is my airbrush. Okay, I can get integrated systems that have built-in. I don't happen to use that. I use 2 separate systems. The compressor that I use Awada compressors. In this fact, I'm using today the Awada SmartJet. It's super quiet. It has a tank, which is why I like it. So when it builds to the pressure that I want, which in this case is at about 45, 50 PSI, it turns itself off, so it's not running all the time. So it's relatively quiet in my kitchen, right? Which is always good. However, it only generates about 45, 50 pounds of PSI, so I can't do other things with it. This is an airbrush that I use. Show to both cameras. I use Badger 250s. I use Badger 250s for a couple reasons. 1, because they're relatively inexpensive. 2, because they can kind of take a beating. So they go in and out of my hot box, which is over here, which you can't see. They're relatively easy to clean, and honestly, they're what was taught to me by my friends, Chef Ewald Nodder and Chef Anil Rahera, and I'm a creature of habit. So they're They're nice because I can get a bunch of them, right? So I have a bunch in here in my hot box that I'll show you as we're doing stuff today that are set at, have different colors so that I don't have to worry about cleaning them out between things. I can just move from one color to another and I can put them back in that hot box. When I travel and I do demonstrations on the road, I actually use a yogurt maker, right, for hot. In this case, I'm using a standard effector or a melter that we would use for chocolate. But which you can't see. And I would grab the iPad, except for it's duct taped currently to the marble, so it doesn't move around. But anyway, so that's my airbrush and my compressor. This is the next tool of my trade. This is, it's called an Easy Temper. And what it's doing for me is that it's creating the beta crystals that I want for perfect temper. So, see if I can make a little more noise. So in here I have cocoa butter that is at 33 degrees, okay? So what I'm gonna do is that I'll show you the process in a little bit, but I'm gonna bring my cocoa butter down to about, I'm like converting Celsius and Fahrenheit in my head. I'm gonna bring it down to about 90 degrees, and then I'm gonna add 2 to 3% of my silk for my Easy Temper to bring my butter into perfect temper, okay? I also use a thermometer. In this case, I'm using a digital thermometer, recognizing the limitations of a digital thermometer from the standpoint of that I'm only gonna get a surface temperature, right? But that's okay, because I'm gonna stir things, I'm gonna move stuff around. I have my handy dandy Home Depot issued heat gun. Hairdryer works great too. Remember that cocoa butter, when it's in temper, it's going to want to crystallize, it's going to want to set. And so there are times where we're going to need to break up that crystallization so that we can use the product, okay? So, what else do I have on my counter? I have a bunch of plastic molds. Polycarbonate injection molds for praline. I've got a couple different shapes and sizes here. I have a roll of Scotch tape, and we'll get to that in a minute. And I know this was one of the questions, Kyle. I remembered this one. How do I get my butter off my molds? And I'm going to use paper towels. And I'll show you that technique too after we do a little bit of spraying. Okay? So, you know what I need? I need cocoa. Here at Tomric, we actually sell chocolate butter, color cocoa butter. We made that switch. Mike, you're gonna help me out when we make that switch. We made that switch about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I think, from another manufacturer. Mike agreed with me 2 years ago. We've been super happy with the quality, and we've been super happy with the myriad of colors. Okay, so they're sitting in this box. That box is set at 30 degrees Celsius right now, and 30 C is about 86 degrees, but they're gonna be a little warmer than that. Okay, they're actually at 86.7, so they're pretty close. So another question that I know got asked already was, do you need to melt the entire quantity of the jar? Keep in mind that this is an emulsion of color and fat, right? So, in theory, if we have a good emulsion, like when we first get it, it should have evenly distributed color throughout the entire mass. So you know what? No, it's not a big deal, okay? Whether you pull some of it out. But as you start to melt it, it has potential to separate to a certain degree, and then your color to butter ratio may be off if you don't melt the entire thing. We keep ours in our hot box to do it, to melt them, just because it's easier. So that as we need them, we pull them out, or we'll melt them and we'll put them into deli cups. So for example, I have red in this deli cup. And this is a little warmer. This is like 93, 94 degrees. Okay, but we're still within that sweet spot for me to be able to add my silk to it to get it to be in temper. Temper, not temper, why is it important? Why is temper important, right? Temper is important for the same reason it's important with chocolate. If we think about our colored cocoa butter, what is it? It's colored cocoa butter. That might be one of the silliest things I think I've said in the 6 weeks we've been doing this. But in all seriousness, like Chris Harvey reminded us the other day, what are we tempering in chocolate? We're tempering the butter, right? The solids don't really matter from a tempering standpoint. All they do is they restrict the cocoa butter from tempering. So if we want good shine and we want good release, whether that be from our mold or wherever, we have to hit our butter and temper, okay? When you receive colored cocoa butter, it's usually in temper, right? So if you order this bottle from us, we're going to ship it to you in temper. But the more you put it, the more you melt it, whether it's in the microwave or somewhere else, you risk taking that butter out of temper. Okay, so I could sit here, right, and I could shake for a little bit, and I can get my temperature down to my 89 degrees, and hope that I get that in temper, or I can force seed it. Okay, which is what we're going to do today. We're going to seed this red first. Okay, and so here I have approximately like 85 grams. Is that right? Am I doing that math right? I'm like doing the math in my head. It's 80 grams because I didn't turn my scale. So it's about 80 grams. Okay, so 80 grams times 3%. 2.4 grams, because math and I are not friends this afternoon, okay? So what am I gonna do? I'm gonna take my silk, and I'm gonna seed it. So I'm gonna add 2.5 grams. I know some people that use a little more, use a little less, so we'll go to 3 grams, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it. And I'm going to stir that in. Okay. When I'm done, I'm going to put this back into my easy temper. I'm going to blend that in. Okay. So I don't know if you can see. We've got this really beautiful, luxurious red color with an edible luster in it. And before you ask, I don't know the name of this color because it's out of the jar. Sorry, it's one of the reds. How's that? Okay. I find that I get better results with 3%. Somebody just asked on Instagram, the number is like 1%. I usually take it up a little bit just to force seed it. It also allows me to be a little warmer with the butter itself. Okay, so at that point, I need a couple things. I need one of my jars. Uh-oh, Hawkins watching. Now I'm nervous. Sorry. See, I can see everything. I can see both screens at once. You can't. So also I can tell you right now, this is a little cold because that hasn't been in there real long. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to heat that up a little bit because I can see that there's some crystallized cocoa butter in the actual tube itself. So now we're ready to go, okay? So this piece, I'm gonna fill this up with my red. We'll leave that right here. Goes on. And we're gonna attach. Somebody asked earlier too about horsepower on this. Actually, to be honest with you, I don't know. I know that I'm able to get my 45 PSI, which is what I was more worried about. And it has a tank, which was what I'm more concerned about, my PSI and what I'm able to create, all right? So, at that point, turn my compressor on. That might help, right? One of those airbrush rules, always spray away from whatever you're spraying first before you go to your finished piece, just to make sure that you're getting the effect that you want, okay? So short first for me, because I want kind of a speckled effect here versus like really heavy. And we're able to get color on our molds, okay? Also, normally on this counter at this point, there would be a box with a fan and a furnace filter pulling the air out so that we don't have this overspray that's kind of going everywhere right now, okay? So, I got asked specifically about how do I clean my molds once there's color on them, right? Because I don't want this chocolate ultimately to end up in my tempered chocolate, or I don't want this color to end up in my tempered chocolate. So I have a paper towel in my mold, and I just wipe that along. I don't know if you can see on Facebook because the angle's a little different, but I'll try to pull back a little bit, okay? So, at that point, the outside of my mold stays nice and clean, okay? That extra color is landed here. It's not landing back in my tempering unit. And so I agree with you. It is that the color that it's luscious red, or is that what we're calling it? Somebody put up a comment about luscious red. So we're able to do that, okay? Now, for the most part, when we're spraying too, depending on what color we're using, you know, if we're spraying in white, it's not a big deal. You're not gonna see that real well, right? Because it's gonna sit on top. Red looks great with chocolate, I'll be honest with you. I like the way that it looks. But we need to build basically a palette. All right. Sorry, my Instagram friends. I disappeared for a second. I need a little white color. Okay. So a lot of times we'll use white behind it. I also like to use black a lot of times, especially because the red and black create this really nice finish that makes it almost look like wood, right? So it kind of creates a really cool final look. All right, so hey, Mike's got a question for me, so he's going to ask me a question. Fire away, Mike. So how long does it last in the sprayer before I need to worry about cleaning it or retempering it? I don't know if you saw, I went right back to the hot box with that piece, right? So I went back to the hot box with the sprayer because the tops will get cold, especially in here. This kitchen today is like 68 degrees, so it's a little chilly, a little colder than I normally want to spray with. So, you know, we've got to be aware of that. Obviously, if it's just, I've now totally lost my train of thought. You know, we want to be aware with what's going on. So if we're continuously using it, you know, the compression is also adding cold, right? So we're at about, we're close to like 15 grams here. So I'm not going to add a lot, but I'm going to add a little bit of my silk to that white to make sure that we're going to get good release when we finally get in and out of the mold. Okay. And we're gonna blend that in as well. Okay. Double check my temperature. And we're at about 87 Fahrenheit. So we're in temper. We've forced some seeding, some crystallization going on in there. And then hopefully we're ready to go. So my friend Ruth just said, tell me about the easy temper, because she's cheating for our friend Carrie. So what we've talked a little bit about before, it's creating a seed for me to use in other things. In this case, I'm using it to seed my cocoa butter. So we're going to go into those molds with a little bit of white. And what that's going to do for us when we finally go to mold these is it's going to create a palette for when our chocolate comes out of it. Okay, so Again, we have a little bit of overspray because I don't have my fan because it would have been really loud in here today. So again, like Mike asked me about before, somebody asked before, about where this is going. This is now going back into my hot box, which is set at, 90 degrees-ish, 30°C, okay? Same deal as before. We're gonna clean this mold up with a paper towel and the table itself. Just come along and we're gonna wipe that off, okay? Super easy, right? Not particularly complicated design. I was talking with the team before. We had our call this morning about what we're gonna do. And I said, there are lots of people in this world that are way more talented than me in this. As I flipped through my own Instagram page today, and there were 14 pieces of colored chocolate that were sepal, that were beautiful. And so we really just wanted to kind of cover some of the basics of what's going on. So a really quick, easy trick for a mold like this that I'll show you right now. And there are probably better tapes than the tape I'm going to use. I'm going to use, Natasha's asking about temperature. My chocolate melter is set at about 30°C or 90 degrees-ish. My easy temper is set at about 33.5°C. I'm targeting that, I'm targeting adding my silk or my easy temper at like 31, 32 degrees to ensure that I'm getting temper. Okay, so what I usually do is we'll microwave our cocoa butter and then we'll put it in there and allow it to cool. And then we'll seat it back. So the cocoa butter that's in there for the most part is not in temper, unless it's still in temper from the last time we used it, until we seat it, okay? So I'm taking a piece of Scotch tape and I'm laying it across my mold. And I'll show you, I'll pick this up in just a second to show it to you. All right? I don't know if you can see it. Okay. And these lines won't be super, super crisp, but they will at least give a little bit of delineation on the mold itself. And we'll do a couple different colors here to show you how that works. So I'm going to lay across all 3 lines of the mold. I'm not sticking it on super tight either because I don't want to get my mold all gummy. And that's what I mean, there are better tapes than this, obviously. Masking tapes, and, for painting that don't leave a mark and don't leave any tape on the outside. Sorry, I was just making sure that I was happy there. So what we'll do, let's see, what do we got? We've got another empty jar. And in this case, I'm going to use, see if I can make a mess over here. But fortunately, I'm not on the screen, so you can't see. I'm going to use red first. Natasha, did I answer your question? Are we good? I can review again too. So again, I'm spraying away from my mold. At that point, I'm able to peel my tape away. Into the trash. Tape away. See if I can get it into the trash without getting red color cocoa butter all over me. Last piece. Back to my paper towel. Our mold's clean. Okay. I don't know if you can see it there. So we get a pretty nice line, not particularly high tech, okay? So I said before, one of the things that I like to use with red a lot is I use black, okay? So I have my black cocoa butter here. So Mike just asked me how far ahead of time can you spray the molds. I like to do them the same day, but I know there are a lot of people that will spray up to a day ahead of time, depending on the number of molds that they do. I find that I get better results when I do them and then when I mold them, right? But again, I think there's an awful lot of ways that people are using cocoa butter, you know, to get the results that they want. We had a chef here a couple months back who uses a lot of cocoa butter, and we talked about process, and their response to me was that they never temper their butters. They just cool them, right? And then we also, you know, a couple weeks back, I had a pretty lengthy conversation with Chris Harvey, and we spent a lot of time on cocoa butter, and we spent a lot of time on the use of cocoa butter, and he's not in that camp whatsoever, right? He's on the side that your butters have to be perfectly crystallized every time, and your molds have to be polished, and that whole conversation, right? So I think there's a lot of different ways that we get to where we want to get to with cocoa butter, and I think there are a lot of people that are you know, doing some really pretty rock star fabulous things, and I think some of that is that, you know, take the things that work best for you in your own kitchen or your own shop, and, you know, make them work. Okay, so I'm seeding my black now. Using my silk. I'm grabbing my top of my sprayer, top of my airbrush, giving a little bit of temperature so that it'll spray. Yeah, Mike's asking me about, can I store in there? And yeah, I mean, we store in that melter all the time. You know, so we'll melt them. You know, we'll get them hot. You know, north of 40, 45 C, 115 F, right? And then we leave them in there, right? And so they end up holding. If we put them in temper, they tend to stay in temper, which is kind of nice. So black. So I'm spraying over my red, right? I'm not really worried about the overspray because I'm going to come back with white, right? So what we'll do, I'm not going to do the whole thing because you get the point. We'll now do exactly the same thing that we did before with our white. And like I said, this gives us kind of a wood finish. So I'm reading a note from Cindy. I was told it can be weeks. I don't know what you're referring to. So how far in advance can you spray the molds? You know, I mean, I think what works for you, I mean, remember it's a thin coat of cocoa butter again, right? So you risk some temper issues, at least in my kitchen, where, you know, the temperature changes, especially in the summer around here. We have full windows, and that's part of the reason that I like to get into, chocolate into the molds as quickly as possible. So again, we're gonna come along and we'll spray, or we'll spray. We already sprayed, we're gonna clean those up. And then what we'll do, I don't know if you can see the top ones, you know, they have a little bit of dimension by adding the black, and then you'll see a really great finish when we go to put chocolate in them. Okay. So airbrushing's kind of become as fast and easy. Obviously, we know we can splatter butter, we can paint with our fingers, we can use brushes, we can do all that things. The things we want to remember is that I work for the mold company. We can drive a car over this and not break it, but it'll scratch really easy. So we want to be careful with whatever tool we're putting in there. So we don't want to put, you know, we want to be careful if we're using a skewer to put chocolate on the inside or put cocoa butter on the inside or any of those things. That was really fast and it was really basic, but that was what we were going for today. I will hang out for a little bit and see if there are any questions, but as always, thanks a bunch for joining us. This Friday on Chocolatier Chat, 2 o'clock on Instagram only, sorry Facebook friends, we'll figure that out one of these weeks. We are talking to Brad from Cho Chocolate, also president of the FCIA. Not sure what we're going to talk about yet. I think we're going to talk a little bit about developing a bean-to-bar chocolate business and what that industry is looking like in North America right now. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the FCIA and what it's like to be president of that organization, and probably herding cats like being president of any organization, any volunteer organization these days. But I think that's it. So thanks everybody. I don't see any questions. Mike, you got anything else for me? Okay, so shelf life of cocoa butter. So remember, you're welcome, Sherry. Remember, cocoa butter is a fat. It risks rancidity. But generally your shelf life is a long period of time. I think ours, we talk about a year shelf life, but the reality of it, there's not a lot going on there other than the risk of rancidity. Natasha, do I warm my molds before I spray them? I don't, generally because I'm bad at it. When I tend to warm my molds for whatever I'm doing, I end up, you know, warming them too far, and then I have temper issues down the road. I would say that we were talking a little bit before about how long you leave butter in. If I leave the butter in for too long, I will hit them with a hair dryer. The language is tough today. I'll hit it with a hair dryer for a little bit just to warm that butter up slightly. The trick is that you don't want to take it back out of temper. And so it's the same challenge with this mold. If I get this mold to 95 degrees, right? If I put butter in it, I risk not getting really good crystallization. So we're talking about that, about what temperature my molds are. Generally, I use molds at room temperature. Lots of other people warm their molds. And for certain applications I do warm my molds, but generally I don't. We want to keep it below our crystallization temperature for the chocolate, right? So if we're working with a chocolate that goes back out of temper at 87 degrees, that mold can't be warmer than 87 degrees, right? So we can target 85 degrees F, right? So if my chocolate goes out of temper at 28 degrees C, same kind of story. So we just have to be careful about that. What we'll do, actually, to be honest with you, the way that we warm molds in this kitchen is we put them next to one of our temperers that is blowing warm air. So they warm up slightly, but they're above room temperature. These molds right now are at about 70 degrees because it's a little warmer over here right now. And then with what we did today, the butter, you know, is crystallizing in them. It's sticking, it's setting in the mold itself. So we're kind of there. So I think that's it. I think that's everybody's questions. Mike gave me a thumbs up. There are no questions on the bottom of the screen. So again, thanks for joining us. I hope you can join us on Friday for Chocolatier Chat. And feel free to message us. You can DM us if you have any questions or you have any ideas for what you want to see. And then go from there. Last question that I'm getting to, different colors have different hotspots as far as temperature. They have different viscosities based on how much color is in them, right? And so if they have more color too, they may require a little cooler temperature to set. They also, what the challenge is, because they have more color, they don't spray as well if they have a lot more color. There's a color from a supplier, a green color that is full of color that doesn't spray well until you get it pretty warm, right at the edge of temper. And so those are the challenges with that. So I think that's it. Mike, you got anything else for me? Cool, thanks everybody. See you on Friday. Oh, yeah, see you on Friday. DM us if you have any ideas. Feel free to check out my Instagram page at Brian Donaghy. And appreciate it, y'all.